Aylia Zehir learned early that survival didn't wait for permission. She was smart, top of her class without ever needing to say it out loud. The scholarship letter sat folded in her drawer like something fragile, the only reason she now attended a private school built for students who never worried about rent or overdue bills. She wore her uniform carefully, as if neatness could make her invisible. After school, she worked. 2 jobs. No one knew. Mornings began before sunrise. Evenings ended with aching feet and numbers running through her head. How much was left? What could wait? What couldn't? Every dollar mattered. Every choice had weight. At home, Aylia wasn't just a daughter. She was a second parent to Casey, her 15-year-old sister who attended public school and pretended not to notice when Aylia skipped meals. Casey complained loudly, laughed easily, and leaned into Aylia's presence like it was something solid. Then there was Denver, her older brother, the valedictorian, the pride of a public school that couldn't contain him. He studied abroad now, chasing the future their father once dreamed of. Every month, money arrived from him without explanation, his way of staying close. Their father had been the center of everything. Cancer took him 6 years ago. Since then, their mother worked endless shifts as a nurse, grief tucked neatly behind professionalism. Aylia helped wherever she could, cooking, cleaning, listening, holding things together when the house felt too quiet. Strength became routine. Silence followed. Lately, her body had begun to betray her. She tired too easily. The stairs left her breathless. Some mornings, the room tilted just enough to make her pause. She blamed stress. She always did. There was no time to be sick when people depended on you. By the time Aylia Zehir stepped onto the polished campus of her new school, she had already learned how to endure without asking for help. What she didn't know, what no one warned her about, was how quickly endurance could turn into vulnerability. I turned 18 2 weeks before my first day at Telfair Woodridge Academy. The number didn't feel real. Nothing about my life changed overnight. Bills still waited on the counter, the fridge still hummed too loudly, and my alarm still rang before the sun rose. 18 didn't mean freedom. It meant responsibility with a different name. "Aylia, you're going to be late." My mother's voice floated down the narrow hallway, calm but tired. She stood in the kitchen in her nurse's scrubs, hair pulled back, dark circles she pretended weren't there. "I know," I called back, tying my shoes. My fingers fumbled more than usual. I flexed them, annoyed. Give me a second." Casey sat at the table, legs tucked beneath her, scrolling on her phone. She glanced up and smirked. "First day at rich kids' school and you're already stressed." "It's not a rich kid's school," I said automatically. She raised an eyebrow. "It literally has Woodridge in the name." I sighed, grabbing my bag. "You're impossible." "Just honest," she said, then softened. "You're gonna be fine, Aylia." Mom turned, studying me in that quiet way she had when she was worried but didn't want to ask. "Did you eat?" "Yes," I lied. Her mouth pressed into a thin line like she knew. "Your bus, I know." I leaned down and kissed her cheek. She smelled like coffee and antiseptic. "I'll text you later." As I reached the door, she called after me, softer this time. "Don't push yourself so hard today." I paused, hand on the knob. "I won't." Another lie. Outside, the morning air felt heavier than it should have. I stood still for a moment, breathing through the dizziness until it passed. Stress, I told myself. First day nerves, that's all. The gates of Telfair Woodridge Academy were exactly what Casey imagined. Tall, polished, intimidating. Students moved through them like they belonged there, laughing easily, clothes pressed perfectly, futures already written. I adjusted my uniform and kept my head down. This was my chance, my only one. I couldn't afford to mess it up. By the time I reached my locker, my chest felt tight. Not fear, I told myself. Just nerves. First day nerves. I repeated it like a promise. What I didn't know yet was that this school would change everything. And not in the way scholarships were supposed to. The bus ride ended too quickly. I was halfway up the front steps when someone bumped into me. Not hard, just enough to throw me off balance. My books slipped from my arms and scattered across the stone path. "I'm sorry," I said automatically, crouching down. "I didn't see you," a voice replied. Male, distracted, already moving. I gathered my things quickly, fingers trembling as I stacked papers back into my bag. A shadow lingered near me for half a second longer, then disappeared. I stood, heart beating faster than it should have, embarrassed more than hurt. I didn't look up. There was no reason to. People were still flowing past, laughter and footsteps blurring together. Whoever he was, he'd already vanished into the crowd. I brushed dust from my sleeve and continued inside, telling myself not to overthink it. First day nerves. That's all it was. Inside, the halls were brighter than I expected. Lockers lined the walls in neat rows, polished and unmarked, nothing like the chipped metal ones back home. I found my number, twisted the lock twice before it finally opened, and exhaled quietly. I could do this. I slid my books inside and closed the door, unaware that the brief collision on the steps would become the smallest moment with the largest consequences. At the time, it meant nothing. Just another stranger. Just another hallway. Just another day I was trying to survive. The bell rang, sharp enough to make me flinch. The hallway filled fast, lockers slamming, voices overlapping, shoes scuffing against the floor. I stepped back against the wall, rereading my schedule like it might change if I looked at it long enough. "Did you see Atlas and Chem?" a girl said behind me. Another voice snorted. "He doesn't even try anymore." "That's because he doesn't have to." I glanced up, not because I cared, but because the name kept coming up. "Xavier Atlas," someone else said. "Coach already treats him like a pro." "Yeah, until he screws up." A laugh. "As if." I followed the sound without meaning to. A small group had formed near the lockers, angled toward the end of the hall where a few guys stood like they had nowhere else to be. One of them leaned casually against the wall, jacket half-zipped, talking like the hallway belonged to him. I didn't catch his face at first, just the way people slowed when they passed him, like they were waiting for something. Or someone. That was when I saw him properly. Xavier Atlas stood at the center of it all like he belonged there. Broad shoulders, effortless confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Laughter followed him. Admiration clung to him. He didn't chase attention. It came willingly, drawn to him without hesitation. I told myself not to stare. "Senior," someone murmured nearby. "Plays games. Everyone knows that." "He's annoying," a girl said. "But, yeah." "Don't pretend you wouldn't." "I wouldn't survive him," the first girl replied. "No one does." Everyone wanted Xavier Atlas. That much was obvious. He had everything: popularity, power, a future already mapped out in clean, shining lines. The kind of boy you were warned not to fall for because he never noticed girls like me. The crowd shifted, and for a moment his gaze lifted. Sharp. Unreadable. It felt like being measured and dismissed in the same breath. I looked away first, my chest tightening for reasons I didn't want to examine. That was when I realized something dangerous. Xavier Atlas wasn't just every girl's dream. He was the kind of boy who ruined them. I adjusted my bag and slipped past the group while they were still talking, already fading back into the background where I belonged. At the time, he was just another name echoing through the hall. I didn't know yet how quickly names could stop being just names. I hate crowded hallways. Too much noise, too many people pretending they matter. I lean back against the lockers while the guys talk about practice, about parties, about things that come easy when you already know how the year ends. I half listen, scanning the hall out of habit more than interest. Then she moves past me. Quiet. Careful. Like she's learned how not to be noticed. Most people at Telfair Woodridge take up space without thinking. She does the opposite. Head down, shoulders slightly tense, moving like she's counting steps instead of faces. I watch her longer than I should. She doesn't look at me. Not once. That's new. "Who's that?" someone asks behind me. I don't answer. I don't need to. "She's new," another voice says. "Scholarship, I think." I scoff internally. Scholarships don't last here. This place eats people who don't know how to play. She disappears into the crowd, gone before I decide whether she's worth remembering. "She's not your type," one of them adds, amused. I smirk. I don't have a type. That part is true. What I have is control. And as I push off the lockers and head down the hall, I tell myself she was nothing, just another face that won't last past midterms. I don't realize yet that the ones who don't look at me are always the ones who do the most damage. PE was the last place I wanted to be on my first day. The gym buzzed with noise, whistles, sneakers squeaking, voices echoing too loudly. I stood near the bleachers, adjusting the sleeves of my uniform-issued athletic shirt, already counting the minutes until it was over. "Pair up!" I didn't move. People paired off quickly, familiar and effortless. I stayed where I was, pretending to stretch, pretending not to notice that I was the only one left standing. That's when I felt it. Not a touch, a look. I glanced up and met his gaze. Xavier Atlas stood across the gym, hands resting on his hips, expression unreadable. He wasn't staring openly, not like the others did. It was quick, assessing, like he'd noticed something out of place. I looked away first. Heat crept up my neck, annoyed at myself more than anything else. He went back to talking to his friends, laughter easy, attention already gone. Good. The rest of the class passed without incident. No embarrassment, no drama, just drills, laps, and my lungs burning more than they should. When the whistle blew, relief hit me harder than exhaustion. I was towel drying my hands when the coach called out, "Aylia Zehir?" "Yes," I answered, startled. "Principal wants to see you. Now." A few heads turned. I felt my stomach drop. Before I could ask why, the coach added, "Atlas, you too." Xavier looked up, irritation flashing across his face before he masked it. "What for?" he asked. "Office. Now." We walked out of the gym in silence. Up close, he was taller than I'd realized. He smelled faintly like soap and something sharper, clean, expensive. I kept my eyes forward, counting tiles on the floor. "You in trouble already?" he asked casually. "No," I replied. "Are you?" He huffed a quiet laugh. "Unlikely." The principal's office was quiet in a way the rest of the school wasn't. Polished furniture, diplomas lining the walls. Principal Hartley smiled when she saw me. "Aylia, welcome again to Telfair Woodridge Academy," she said warmly. "I hope your first day's gone smoothly." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She turned to Xavier. "Atlas, you're one of our senior student leaders this year." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm assigning you to show Aylia around this week. Help her get settled." "What?" he said, the words slipping out before he could stop it. I glanced at him despite myself. Principal Hartley raised an eyebrow. "Is that a problem?" "No," he replied quickly. "Just surprised." "You'll walk her through the campus, answer questions, make sure she knows where everything is," the principal continued. "You're free during study period, yes?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, tone flat. "Good." She smiled at me again. "Aylia, if you need anything, don't hesitate to come to me." "Thank you." As we stood to leave, Xavier stepped aside to let me pass. "This way," he said, already walking ahead. Not rude, not kind, just annoyed. I followed him into the hallway, aware of one thing very clearly. Whatever smooth start I'd hoped for ended the moment Telfair Woodridge Academy decided Xavier Atlas and I should cross paths again. Xavier didn't slow his pace. He moved through the hallways like he had somewhere better to be, long strides, shoulders set, expecting me to keep up without comment. I adjusted my grip on my bag and matched him step for step, refusing to ask him to slow down on principle. "This is the East Wing," he said without looking back. "Classrooms, labs. You've probably already seen most of it." "I've been here less than 8 hours," I replied. "So, no." He glanced over his shoulder, unimpressed. "Then pay attention." Silence followed, thick and uncomfortable. We passed rows of glass-fronted classrooms, students inside hunched over tablets and notebooks. Everything here looked expensive, intentional, like mistakes weren't allowed to exist. "Libraries upstairs," Xavier continued. "Quiet zone. You talk, you get kicked out." "That sounds welcoming," I said. A corner of his mouth twitched. "It's not." I bit back a smile. He stopped abruptly in front of a wide staircase, forcing me to halt just short of bumping into him. He turned, arms crossed, expression flat. "You always this sarcastic?" he asked. "Or is that just for me?" "I don't know you well enough to customize my personality yet." For a moment, he just stared at me. Not amused, not angry. Measuring. "Fair," he said finally, then turned and kept walking. The library was exactly what I expected. Quiet to the point of reverence, sunlight spilling across long tables, shelves stretching higher than seemed necessary. I paused just inside the doorway, absorbing it. "Don't fall asleep in here," Xavier muttered. "They'll write you up." "I don't sleep in public places," I said. He scoffed. "Everyone does eventually." Something in his tone made me glance at him, but he was already moving on. We crossed the courtyard next, the air warm and bright. Students lounged on benches, some studying, others pretending to. A few glanced our way, curiosity flickering when they noticed who I was walking with. I ignored it. "Cafeteria's over there," Xavier said, pointing vaguely. "Food's overpriced, don't ask me why." "Do you eat here?" I asked. "No." "Figures." He stopped again, this time slower, deliberate. Turned to face me fully. "You always comment on things you don't know anything about?" I met his gaze evenly. "Only when they comment first." For a second, I thought he might snap back. Instead, he exhaled sharply through his nose and looked away. "This was a mistake," he muttered. "I didn't ask for this either," I said quietly. That earned me another look, longer this time. Something unreadable flickered there, then disappeared. "Administration loves assigning charity work," he said. "Makes them feel balanced." I stiffened. "I didn't say you were," he cut in, already walking again. "Relax." The gym entrance came into view, and my legs protested with a dull ache I tried to ignore. I slowed for half a step, just enough for him to notice. "You okay?" he asked, irritation edging his voice. "Yes." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't sound convincing." I didn't realize I needed to. Another pause. Another stare. "You're exhausting," he said. "That makes 2 of us." We stopped outside the main building again, Tor looping back toward where we'd started. Xavier checked his watch, jaw tightening. "That's pretty much it," he said. "You'll figure out the rest." "Thank you," I said, and meant it despite everything. He hesitated like he hadn't expected that. "Yeah," he replied. "Whatever." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Try not to get lost," he added. "This place doesn't wait for people." I watched him walk away, posture rigid, patience visibly frayed. And as much as I hated to admit it, one thought lingered long after he disappeared into the crowd. Xavier Atlas wasn't cruel. Not yet. But he was already dangerous in ways I didn't fully understand. The rest of the day passed the way storms do when you're watching from indoors. Fast, loud, and slightly unreal. Classes blurred together. Names, faces, rules I barely registered. I answered questions when called on, took notes automatically, nodded at instructions that felt distant. Every now and then my mind drifted back to the way Xavier Atlas walked away, shoulders tense, like he'd been counting down the minutes since we'd been paired. I told myself it didn't matter. By the final bell, exhaustion sat heavy in my limbs. Not the kind sleep fixed, the kind you learn to carry. The bus ride home was quieter. I leaned my head against the window, watching the city change from polished buildings to familiar cracked sidewalks. My chest felt tight again, pressure blooming slowly until I focused on breathing through it. Home smelled like laundry detergent and reheated soup. Mom was already there, shoes kicked off by the door, scrubs wrinkled, hair pulled loose. She looked up when I entered, a tired smile crossing her face. "How was it?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Long." She nodded like she understood exactly what that meant. I dropped my bag by the couch and went to the kitchen to grab water. That's when I saw it. An envelope sat on the counter, stark white against the worn surface. The return address made my stomach sink. Final notice. Mom noticed my pause. "It came this afternoon," she said quietly. I picked it up, fingers trembling despite myself. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. "How much?" I asked. She exhaled slowly, sinking into the chair. "More than last time." The room felt smaller suddenly. "I can take more shifts," I said automatically. "I can ask for extra hours at the cafe. Maybe the tutoring—" "Aylia," she interrupted gently. "You're already doing too much." I shook my head. "I'm fine." She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes softened, worry settling in deeper lines she pretended weren't there. "You said that last time," she said, "and the time before that." I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "We don't have a choice." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unsaid. "I don't want this life for you," she said finally. "You should be focusing on school, on being 18. I managed a weak smile. "I am. This is just part of it." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your father would be proud of you." The words hit harder than the letter ever could. I nodded, because if I spoke, I would break. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the day replaying in fragments. Hallways, lockers, laughter that didn't belong to me. A name I hadn't meant to remember. Xavier Atlas. I pushed the thought away, rolling onto my side. Tomorrow would come whether I was ready or not. And I had learned a long time ago that survival didn't wait for comfort. Xavier Pav. Nights were usually easy. I liked them because they didn't ask for anything. No expectations, no performances, just silence, something I could control. My room was dark except for the glow of my phone, the city humming through the open window like white noise. I lay back on my bed, hands folded behind my head, staring at the ceiling like it owed me something. It didn't. I'd already showered, already eaten, ignored 3 group chats without a second thought. Still, something felt off. I hated that. I checked my phone again out of habit, not interest. Notifications stacked, messages waiting. None of them mattered. The phone buzzed anyway. I exhaled through my nose, annoyed more than curious. I wasn't supposed to feel anything tonight. Today had gone exactly how it should have: routine, forgettable, controlled. So why couldn't I shut my brain up? I rolled onto my side, jaw tightening. I didn't like disruptions. Didn't like things I couldn't label and move past. Tomorrow would fix it. It always did. And if it didn't, then I'd make it. Jax, you bounced early. Everything good? I typed a reply, deleted it, locked my phone and tossed it onto the bed like the conversation wasn't worth finishing. Everything was fine. It always was. And yet, my mind kept circling back to the same image, uninvited and persistent. A girl walking beside me without trying to impress me. A girl who talked back without raising her voice. A girl who didn't look relieved when I walked away. I scoffed under my breath. She's exhausting. Saying it out loud was supposed to make it stick. It didn't. I rolled onto my side, jaw tightening as irritation settled deeper. I hated disruptions. Hated things I couldn't categorize, control, and discard without effort. People were simple. Patterns were easy. This shouldn't have mattered. Tomorrow would reset everything. A new day. It always did. Still, sleep came slower than it should have. And I didn't like that either. Casey noticed before I said anything. She always did. I was at the sink, washing dishes I'd already cleaned once, when she leaned against the doorway. Arms crossed, head tilted, that look that meant she'd been watching me longer than I was comfortable with. "You're scrubbing like the plates did something to you," she said. "I'm cleaning," I replied. "Yeah," she said. "Aggressively." I paused, water still running over my fingers. Long day. She didn't move. "Did something happen at that school?" "No." She waited. She was good at that. I shut off the faucet. "It's just a lot." Casey nodded slowly. "That's not a no." I grabbed a towel, dried my hands more carefully than necessary. "I'm fine, Case." She didn't smile. "You say that when you're not." My phone buzzed on the counter, cutting the moment short. Denver calling. My chest tightened before I even picked it up. "Hey," I said. "Aylia." Denver's voice came through, warm, familiar, stretched thin by distance. "First day. How bad was it?" "It wasn't bad," I said, leaning back against the counter. The moment I stopped standing straight, exhaustion settled in. Just different. He laughed quietly. "That's the school with the gates and tuition that could fund a small country, right?" "Still has the gates," I said. Still absurd. Casey climbed onto a chair, pretending not to listen. Mom appeared in the hallway, slowing when she heard Denver's voice. She smiled, the kind she used when she didn't want to worry anyone. "You eating?" Denver asked. "Yes," I said too quickly. He sighed. "Aylia." "I am," I said. "Just later." The silence that followed felt heavier than the distance between us. "I sent money," he said. "It should be there tomorrow." Mom shook her head immediately. "Denver." "I know," he said gently. "I know. Just let me help." My throat tightened. "Thank you." "Call me if anything is wrong," he added. "First days matter." "I know." The call ended too soon, like it always did. The kitchen felt quieter after. "You don't have to carry everything yourself," Mom said softly. "I know." But I still picked up the envelope from the counter, folded it smaller in my hands, like that might change what it said. Later, in bed, my body ached in places I didn't want to think about. I curled onto my side, phone loose in my grip, the day replaying in fragments. A hallway, a voice, a look I hadn't asked for. I shut my eyes. Tomorrow would come too fast. And somehow I knew it wouldn't be quiet. The bathroom light hummed softly as I brushed my teeth, my reflection staring back at me like it was waiting for reassurance. "You're okay," I told myself. "You can do this." The words felt fragile, but saying them mattered. In my room, I pulled on an old t-shirt and leggings, the fabric worn thin from years of comfort. Before turning off the lamp, my gaze drifted to the photo on my dresser. I picked it up carefully. Dad stood in the middle of us, arms slung around Mom, smiling like the future had never scared him. I traced the edge of the picture, swallowing the tightness in my throat. "First day went fine," I whispered. "You'd like the school. It's big, a little intimidating." I let out a small breath. I was scared, still am, but I didn't let it show. The silence answered back, familiar and aching. "I miss you," I said quietly. "I wish you were here to tell me I'm overthinking everything." My fingers tightened around the frame. "I'm trying to be brave. For Mom, for Casey, for Denver." A pause. "For me." I brushed my thumb over his smile. "I hope I'm doing this right." Carefully, I set the photo back on the dresser. "I'll take care of them," I promised softly. "Just like you did." I turned off the light and slid into bed, the house settling around me like a held breath. As I curled onto my side, the weight in my chest eased just enough. Tomorrow would come whether I was ready or not. So I closed my eyes and chose to be ready. Xavier Pav. I didn't wake up in a bad mood. That was the annoying part. Everything was exactly how it should be. Morning routine, efficient and uninterrupted. Clean uniform, protein bar on the way out. The car already warming up in the driveway like it knew better than to make me wait. The kind of life people assumed meant nothing ever slipped out of place. They were wrong. Telfair Woodridge Academy looked the same as always. Polished stone, manicured hedges, money embedded in every surface. Students clustered in familiar formations, laughter echoing off the walls like controlled noise. Predictable. Contained. And then I saw her. She stood near the main building steps, bag slung over one shoulder, head bent over her schedule like she hadn't already memorized it. There was tension in the way she held herself, shoulders squared, spine too straight, like she was bracing for impact. I told myself not to look twice. Did it anyway. She didn't notice me at first. Most people did. That was new. Unsettling. "Atlas," Jax called, jogging up beside me. "You coming, or are you planning to brood dramatically before first period?" "I don't brood," I said. He grinned. "You're doing it right now." I glanced back just as she looked up. Our eyes met. Half a second. No more. Long enough. She didn't smile. Didn't look away too fast either. Just assessed me, calm, unreadable, then returned to her schedule like I hadn't registered at all. Something tightened in my chest. "What?" Jax asked. "Nothing," I said. "Let's go." First period dragged. Second didn't improve things. By the time PE rolled around, my patience was already thin. Of course she was there. Of course she was assigned to my group. Coach blew the whistle. "Pair up, laps first." I didn't move. Neither did she. The space between us felt intentional, like we were both pretending this wasn't happening. "You're not subtle," she said without looking at me. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You've been staring since you walked in." I scoffed. "You're imagining things." She finally looked at me then, one eyebrow lifting slightly. "Right, that must be a hobby of mine." I laughed once, short, sharp. You always this confrontational, or am I special? She shrugged. You're the one hovering. I'm not hovering. You're standing 3 feet away from me. That's called proximity. That's called annoying. There it was. Coach's whistle sliced through the moment. Atlas, Zehir, office, now. I stared at him. What? Principal wants you both. Her shoulders stiffened. What did you do? She muttered. I turned to her slowly. Bold assumption considering I haven't spoken to you today. She met my glare. I didn't ask to be summoned with you. Trust me, I said coolly. The feeling's mutual. The walk to the office was silent in the worst way, charged, every step echoing too loudly. So, I said finally, you planning to accuse me of something, or are we waiting until we're inside? She shot me a look. Do you talk just to hear yourself? Only when people start things they can't finish. Her jaw tightened. I didn't start anything. You looked at me like I did. I looked at you like you were in my way. I stopped walking. She turned, surprised. You don't know me, I said flatly. So don't decide what I am. Her expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. Then stop acting like everyone owes you something. For a moment, I had nothing to say. That didn't happen often. The principal's door loomed ahead, saving me from responding with something worse. Inside, she smiled too pleasantly. Ah, Xavier. Aylia. Come in. We sat. This isn't disciplinary, the principal said quickly. I simply wanted to follow up on yesterday's tour. I stiffened. You did a fine job showing Aylia around, she continued. So we'd like to formalize it. Xavier, you'll be her peer guide for the semester. What? The word slipped out before I could stop it. Aylia turned sharply. Excuse me? It's part of our integration program, the principal said smoothly. You're a senior leader, Xavier. And Aylia's adjusting well, but support helps. I don't need, Aylia started. It's fine, the principal interrupted gently. Just helping one another. I leaned back, jaw tight. With all due respect, I have commitments, practices, meetings. I'm aware, she replied calmly. You'll manage. That was it. Decision made. Aylia crossed her arms. So I don't get a say? The principal smiled apologetically. You'll thank me later. Outside, the silence snapped back into place. This is ridiculous, I said. She let out a humorless laugh. You think I asked for this? You could have pushed back. I tried. You didn't try hard enough. She stopped and turned on me fully. You don't get to talk to me like that. And you don't get to act like this is my fault. Her eyes flashed. Everything about you screams entitlement. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Careful. Why? She shot back. You going to prove my point? Her voice never rose. That was the problem. Students drifted past us, slowing just enough to pretend they weren't listening. Curiosity flickered across their faces. I stepped back, fists curling at my sides. You're unbelievable, I said, controlled. She laughed once. No humor in it. So are you. Then she stepped closer, just enough to shift the air between us. But at least I know who I am. The words landed clean, precise, like she'd aimed them. For half a second, I had nothing. That never happened. She turned and walked away, shoulders squared, head high, like she hadn't just disrupted my entire sense of order. I stayed where I was longer than necessary, eyes fixed on the space she disappeared into. Not because I was angry, because she hadn't reacted the way she was supposed to. No hesitation, no apology. No doubt when I stepped closer or dropped my voice. She'd met me head on and walked away like I wasn't worth the effort of a second thought. That was a problem. Most people adjusted, learned quickly. She hadn't adjusted at all. As she rounded the corner, she slowed, just slightly. One hand came up to her side before she caught herself, posture snapping back into place like nothing was wrong. I frowned. That shouldn't have registered. I turned toward class, irritation cooling into something quieter, sharper, more deliberate. I didn't like unpredictability. And Aylia Zehir had just made herself one, whether she meant to or not. By the third day, I had a system. I always did. People were patterns. Variables pretended to be chaos, but they weren't. You watched long enough, applied the right pressure, adjusted the angle, and eventually everyone revealed the same things. Where they bent, where they compensated, where they broke. Aylia Zehir hadn't done any of that yet, which meant it was time to test her. I spotted her before she saw me. Library steps this time. The stone ones tucked just off the quad, where students pretended to study and mostly watched each other instead. She sat too straight, spine rigid like posture was something she had to remind herself to maintain. A notebook rested neatly on her knees, pen moving in deliberate strokes. Not rushed, not relaxed either. Focused, but not comfortable. Like focus was something she had to hold on to, not something that came naturally. I altered my route without breaking stride, not close enough to crowd her, close enough to register. She didn't look up. Interesting. Most people glanced reflexively, checked who was near them, adjusted their posture, made space. She didn't. Her eyes stayed locked on the page, lashes low, jaw set. I stopped. Nothing. I cleared my throat. That did it. She looked up slowly, eyes sharp, assessing, and tired in a way that didn't fit someone her age. Not sleepy, not bored. Worn. Yes, she said. Not hi, not can I help you, just yes. Direct, efficient. Peer guide, I reminded her. That's me. Her mouth flattened like she'd bitten back a comment. I didn't forget. You looked like you did. I was studying. It's 8 in the morning. So? She said, genuinely unimpressed. I tilted my head, studying her face. You always this defensive, or am I still special? Her eyes narrowed a fraction. Do you rehearse that line, or does it come naturally? A couple of students slowed nearby, pretending not to listen. I ignored them. Walk with me, I said. That wasn't a request. It was, I replied evenly. She watched me for a moment. Really watched me, like she was calculating cost versus effort. Then she sighed, closed her notebook, and stood. Strike one. Most people resisted just to prove they could. We started walking. The silence stretched, heavy but not awkward. She broke it first. So what exactly does this guiding involve? She asked. Or are you improvising as you go? I make sure you don't get lost, I said. Socially. Academically. She let out a short laugh. No humor in it. I think I'll survive. That confidence is premature. She stopped. I took 2 more steps before realizing she hadn't followed. When I turned, she was standing perfectly still, chin lifted. I'm not lost, she said calmly. And I don't need managing. Everyone needs managing, I replied. They just don't like admitting it. She met my gaze, steady. No flinch, no retreat. Is that what you tell yourself? There it was again. That precise way she spoke, never raising her voice, never reaching for theatrics, just refusing to soften the truth. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You don't belong here. Her jaw tightened, just barely. I know, she said. The admission should have satisfied me. It didn't. I didn't mean financially, I added, watching her carefully. I meant temperamentally. She inhaled slowly through her nose, then exhaled. If you're trying to intimidate me, you're doing it wrong. How so? You're assuming I care what you think. That landed harder than it should have. We resumed walking, but this time she set the pace. Not fast, not slow. Intentional. I started noticing the details then. The way her steps shortened on the stairs. The brief tightening around her mouth when she climbed. How she pressed her lips together like she was pushing something down. Pain, maybe. Fatigue. A weakness. Good. You're quiet today, I said. I'm always quiet. No, I corrected. You're selective. She shot me a look. And you're observant. I have to be. Why? I didn't answer. We reached the science wing. She stopped outside her classroom, hand on the doorframe. So, she said, is this where you disappear until the next forced interaction? For now. She nodded once, then hesitated. Yes, I prompted. Her hand drifted briefly to her side before she caught herself, posture snapping back into place like muscle memory. Nothing, she said. Just don't make this harder than it has to be. I studied her face. Pale, controlled, determined in a way that didn't rely on confidence. I don't, I said. I just apply pressure. She held my gaze a second longer, then turned and went inside. I didn't follow. That afternoon, I tested something else. I took her seat in the common area, the one by the window, half-shadowed, far enough from the noise to think. She stopped short when she saw me there, annoyance flickering before she smoothed it out. You're in my spot. There were no assigned seats. There were understood ones. I leaned back, stretching my legs. Adapt. She stared at me, then calmly set her bag down across from me instead. Happy? She asked. No, I said honestly. But this is informative. She rolled her eyes. You enjoy this. Enjoy what? Provoking people. I enjoy clarity. Well, she said, opening her notebook. You're not getting it from me. Everyone gives eventually. She looked up slowly. I won't. The confidence wasn't loud. That was what made it dangerous. Later, when she stood to leave, she swayed, just slightly, before catching herself. That time I was sure. She noticed me noticing. Her chin lifted. Don't. Don't what? Look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm something you need to figure out. I stood. You already are. Her breath hitched. Not fear. Something else. She walked away without another word. I watched until she disappeared into the crowd. She was hiding something. Pain. Pressure. A limit she was pretending didn't exist. And for the first time, I didn't just want to identify it. I wanted to see what happened when she reached it. That was new. And I had a feeling it would cost us both.